Good morning. Parashat Vayikra. B'Shem Hashem Naaseh V'Natzliach. This shiur is dedicated Le'ilui Nishmat Yecheskel Baruch ben Avraham Halevi, Hanania ben Reuven, and all those who were murdered prior, on, and post October 7. Refuah Shelema to Zechariah Dov ben Pearl Shira, Avraham ben Chana, Tova bat Zipporah, Chaya Esther bat Nechama, Mazal bat Goltej Sultanat. And לזיווג הגון, שיזכו לבנות בית נאמן בישראל for all our singles, בקדושה ובטהרה. And for the success וההצלחה of the חינוך, of the education of our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, בדרך התורה בשלום. So, Parashat Vayikra. The parasha speaks about the korbanot, about the sacrifices. It says in Perek Aleph, Pasuk Bet, Adam ki yakriv mikem, a person from you who wants to, from among you, who brings a sacrifice, korban Hashem, a sacrifice to Hashem. So our first question is, what is the goal of the korbanot, of the sacrifices? Why does the Torah write so much about the korbanot, about the sacrifices? In the Mishnah, there is a section called Seder Kodashim, which deals with the korbanot, an entire section. Then, included in the 613 mitzvot of the Torah, we have 150 of them that are mitzvot that deal with the laws of the different korbanot. There are different korbanot, different animals that can be brought, and so on. And so, okay, so it means that 150 mitzvot that we cannot do, because we don't have the Bet HaMikdash. So what do we do today? We don't have korbanot, right? Because the Bet HaMikdash is not in Yerushalayim. So in that case, what can we do to connect with Hashem the same way as the korbanot used to connect us and bring us closer to Hashem? Offering a korban was not something done by the Kohen Gadol, just something that was technical. Okay, now shechita is done, I collect the blood, I have to remove the skin of the animal has to be removed, all the gunk has to be taken out, then has to be cut into pieces, and then we put it on the mizbeach. It wasn't just like that. It wasn't just one step after another. Offering a korban was actually creating a closeness between us and Hashem. Korban, the root word of korban is karov, which means close, because it brings us close to Hashem. In the Pirkei Avot, in Perek Aleph Pasuk Mishnah Bet, it says, Al sholosha devarim ha'olam omed. The world stands on 3 pillars. We know that pillars are very important for a building because that's what holds a building up. So what holds the world up? 3 things. Ala Torah, the Torah that we learn and we observe. Ala Avodah, the service. Now in a minute we're going to learn what type of service this is referring to. And then the third one, Gemilut Chasadim, doing chesed. So they The Gemara Ta'anit asks the question, Ezohi Avodah? What what is a service? What kind of service is this referring to? The Gemara answers, Avodat HaKorbanot, the service of offering the sacrifices. And today, we cannot offer korbanot. So what can we offer instead? Today we can offer tefillah, our prayers, instead of the korbanot. The avodat hakorbanot, the service of the korbanot, is one of the pillars of the world. It means that today tefillah is the pillar of the world. Just as if we remove a pillar from a building, we know that that building is not going to stand. One is going to come crashing down. It's the same. It means that tefillah today is so important. So already from the beginning of time, we see that already they were already offering korbanot, sacrifices. Korbanot is not a new idea. So when? Who? Adam HaRishon. Adam, he offered a korban. His children, Hevel and Cain, they also offered korbanot, sacrifices. That's when there was the fight between Cain and Hevel. And Cain killed Hevel. He killed his brother. Then Noah. Noah also offered korbanot, sacrifices, after he came out of the Teva. And actually, this is the first time in the Torah that we see the term reach nichoach. Reach nichoach, it means it was a pleasant smell. It's not just a smell, that it went all the way up to Hashem. Hashem was very pleased with the korban that Noah offered. It gave so much pleasure to Hashem. And Hashem accepted the korban of Noah. Then we learn about Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. They also offered korbanot. And then when Moshe came to Paro, and he said a message that Hashem told him to repeat to Paro, what did he say? Let my people go. Hashem said, let my people go. What was the reason to let them go? Because we are going to travel for 3 days in the desert, and we are going to offer sacrifices to Hashem. And even more, even before Ben Israel left Mitzrayim, Egypt, they offered the Korban Pesach that they ate. And until the Mishkan was built, whoever wanted to offer a Korban, he could do so anywhere, as long as he built an altar for it, where he could put the animals. And it was done with stones. Or he could do it on top of a hill, on a high place, right? But once the Mishkan was built, no one had permission to offer a korban outside of the Mishkan. And the same also applies to the times of a Bet HaMikdash. Once the Bet HaMikdash was built, no one was allowed to offer a korban outside of the Bet HaMikdash. The Rambam brings an explanation on Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, referring to the korbanot of the Avot, and says something very interesting, where it seems to us that each Av, or each one of the people who offered korbanot, like Adam, Noah, Hevel, and Cain, that they offered just wherever, but it's not. Rambam said that actually that place was a very special place, because where Adam brought his korban, his children also brought in the same place the korban. And that's the same place where Abraham brought Yitzchak to be sacrificed on Har Moriah. That place, over the years, there were people who came and lived in that area. So there were the Yevusim. Yerushalayim was called Yevus because the Yevusim, the people who lived in it, they were called the Yevusim. And David HaMelech captured this Yevus, Yerushalayim, from the Yevusim. When it was captured, he found out that there was a man, a Yevusi, by the name of Aravna. This Aravna, he owned a house, and he had like a farm, and he had like a granary. And in that granary, the place where the granary was, was actually the place where Abraham had brought Yitzchak for Akedat Yitzchak, and where Adam had brought his korban, and Noah had brought his korban. And David HaMelech knew that this place was very special. So he bought it. He actually paid for this place. And he bought it from Aravna the Yevusi. And that's how later on Shlomo HaMelech, when he built the Bet HaMikdash, he made sure that this place was part of the Bet HaMikdash, because that's where the Kohen Gadol was going to offer the korbanot. Earlier on, we said that the korban brings closeness between us and Hashem. So how? So the korban is a vessel, is a medium to bring us closer to Hashem. As we said already from the beginning of time, it was done by Adam and everyone else that we have mentioned. What for? To provide kapara, so that we can get kapara, atonement for a person's sins. Since the sinner rebelled against Hashem, because every time I make a sin, it means I'm rebelling against Hashem. Hashem is the king, and he gave us laws. Every time I break one of his laws, it means I rebelled against him. And that means a person who rebels against the king really deserves to die. So the korban brings that kapara, that atonement. And the korban, the sacrifice, is instead of the sinner. The life of the sinner is spared. But do I just bring my korban and say, okay, here's an animal, now that's it, go and make of it a sacrifice? No. Obviously, it has to be hand in hand with teshuvah. In fact, that when someone brought a korban chatat, a sinner's korban, he had to put both of his hands on the head of the korban and say the vidui. Means he had to say what he had done wrong. He had to feel regret for what he had done and promise not to do again what he had done. And that is the purpose of the korban, to bring a closeness between us, between Hashem and the sinner. Why? Because the sin causes a distance. It takes us away from Hashem. Because the sin brings tum'ah. So now that a person is able to bring a korban, and it does teshuvah, that tum'ah is gone, and kedusha comes in instead. And the korban actually fixes the damage that was done by the sin. So our next question is, so why does an animal have to be slaughtered? Well, so that I can be forgiven for my sin? So that an animal, the cow or the sheep or the bull or the goat or the bird, it has to be slaughtered so I can be forgiven for my sin? So here's the following explanation. In Masechet Sanhedrin, it says, there are four ma'amadot, four levels of creation. The lowest is domem. Domem means just object, inanimate object, a table, a chair, a rock. That's domem. Number two is the tzomer, the plants, the trees. So the plants are higher than the the rock and 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 the chair or a table. And it means because it's higher, so it has dominion. It can rule over the one lower, which is the domain. Number three, which is higher, is the living creatures, the animals. The animals have dominion over the plants and the rocks. Number four, which is the highest, is medaber. Medaber, it means having the power of speech, which is the human being. The human being has dominion over everything else that came, that we just mentioned, over the animals, over the plants, and over the inanimate objects. And as David HaMelech said in Perek Chet, Pasuk Zayin in Tehillim, he says, תמשלהו במעשה ידיך, ומושל הכל מעשה ידיך, כל שתה תחת רגליו. It means, you, Hashem, you gave the human being dominion over all your work, the work of your hands. You have placed everything under his feet. It means that all creations were created, the animals, the plants, and the inanimate objects have been created to be used by the human being. So we deduct, if there are levels, and each level as we go up, it has dominion over the lower level, it means there is dominion above me, above the human being. It means that's Hashem. And the Midrash Rabbah says in Kohelet, Sof Adam Lamita, Vesof Behema Leshchita. At the end, we have got to understand that at the end, the a human being is going to go good and die. That's the end. We all end our lives. Our lives, we don't end, sorry. Our lives end. And the animals, shechita, they get to be slaughtered. And so when a sinner realizes that he has sinned and he brings a korban, a sacrifice, instead of himself, right? The sacrifice is like the Rambam says, nefesh b'nefesh, dam b'dam. That there's an exchange here, my soul against the soul of the animal, my blood against the animal, the blood of the animal. And so we have to put ourselves under the dominion of Hashem. A person has to surrender to Hashem and do teshuvah. Only then will Hashem forgive. Without teshuvah, bringing an animal for korban just for the sake of bringing the animal, that is not going to give us kapara, forgiveness. And so, because I do teshuvah, that's why I have permission to use the animal for korban. But if I don't do teshuvah, I have no permission to kill this animal, to have that animal slaughtered. So just as I have dominion over the animal, so I have to understand Hashem has dominion over me. And I have to surrender to Hashem. Because these are really the laws of nature. When a person brings a korban, a person has to come to offer the korban belev shavur, with a broken heart. What does this mean with a broken heart? It means that I have to come full of humility. And that's how we also say teshuvah, full of humility, with a broken heart. So when we learn that the Avot, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, offered korbanot, it was not because they had sinned. They offered korbanot because they felt so humble, because they saw and they felt the greatness of Hashem. And that was Reach Nichoach LaHashem. And Hashem was so happy and accepted those korbanot because they were full of humility, full of feeling that Hashem, we are under your rule, we are under your dominion. So today, we have no korbanot. What do we have? Uneshalma parim sefatenu. So instead of having korbanot, we have our tefillah. And that's how we should approach tefillah. Full of humility, full of teshuvah. That the real korban is our heart. By being full of humility and full of teshuvah, we build a mizbeach inside our heart, and that's how we can build the Mashiach, the Bet HaMikdash, by actually fixing our character. And Be'ezrat Hashem, that's how we're going to build the third Bet HaMikdash. We are now in the middle of a war, a terrible war, a very frightening war, a war that doesn't give us any rest, not mentally and not physically, especially in Israel. They have no nights, they have no day. I was speaking to my niece, and she was saying it was already late afternoon, and soon Shabbat is coming, but because of the bombings, she wasn't able to cook Shabbat. She wasn't able to prepare Shabbat. She couldn't. And it wasn't just today. So we think, oh, why did she leave it for today? But it wasn't today. It's the same thing yesterday and the day before. I've been trying to go to the supermarket. Is a danger. So whatever you try to do is so difficult. Right? And we're all waiting for Besorot Tovot. We're all waiting to hear that there's an end to this war and that Mashiach is coming soon, right? And yet we hear of so many miracles that are happening. Yes, unfortunately, and we feel terrible, really terrible for those people who died, who lost loved ones. But on the other hand, we have had so many miracles. So many miracles. So when we hear the stories of the miracles, that gives us encouragement to keep going, despite the fear, despite the danger, despite the distraction that we see and that we feel. 2 days ago, in the news, they were saying that with this, all this mess with the war and everything else, 50 people had the courage to actually make Aliyah. They went up to Israel. They went to settle in Israel in the middle of the war. But they had the courage to do it. Alevai. Hashem, please give us that courage that we too should be able to go and settle in Eretz Israel. But as the Khatam Sofer said, in his days, he lived at the time of Napoleon, and he lived in Hungary, the part of Hungary, Russia, and depend on who ruled that area. At the time, it was Russia, and Napoleon was there, and he lived in the basement of his house. He also had some Talmidim with him, and the Khatam Sofer describes how terrible the bombardment, the bombs that were falling. They did not dare even turn on a light, to turn on a fire, and they were so scared. It was terrible. They dare not go to shul. They dare not go out. Dare go out. So some people said maybe the rabbi should leave the city with his family. But then the congregation said, no, please stay with us. We need your protection. And so he stayed. But he said, with all those miracles happening, that every minute that survived, they said, we cannot remain indifferent. We cannot be that we see miracles and life just goes on. And we expect that once everything comes down, that we can just go on with our lives. We can't. We have to change. What way? If you can take Shabbat on, bring Shabbat earlier on by 5 minutes, by 3 minutes. If you can do one more chesed, if you can say tefillah, or try a little harder in tefillah, or whatever it is, we have to make a change. Because we owe it to Hashem with all those miracles that he does. And he's not only doing miracles in Israel, he's doing for us here too. Unfortunately, the anti-Semites are out there, and they're coming out of their closets, one by one. Unfortunately, there's no shortage of anti-Semites with their plans, but Hashem is protecting us. So there's no way we can go on without actually saying thank you to Hashem. And what's the best way we can say thank you to Hashem? But I am actually taking on the Kabbalah. Kabbalah means a resolution, a tiny little change. We all know what we could do in any area. It could be tzeniut, it could be tefillah, it could be tzedakah, it could be chesed, it could be tefillah, it could be not speaking lashon hara, one time less. Whatever it is, we know each one. Nobody can dictate to anyone else what that resolution can be. Or maybe saying a beracha before eating or after food. But something has to give. And hopefully, Be'ezrat Hashem, as the Khatam Sofer said, he had given tzedakah for pidyon nefesh. Pidyon nefesh means to give tzedakah, say certain prayers, specific prayers, because Hashem saved his life. And because he was in danger. And to say more prayers. This is what he had done. And he had taken on Kabbalot, he had taken on resolutions. Just so, because to say thank you to Hashem for saving him from the war. Eventually he did go out of the city. But for most of the war, he was actually also in danger and from the bombs and from everything else. And that's how he reacted to the danger. So Be'ezrat Hashem, let's take on a small Kabbalah. Let's take on something small, just so we too we can say thank you to Hashem, and hopefully Mashiach will come very, very soon, as all the signs are really here for the coming of Mashiach. Shabbat Shalom. Have a safe and a restful Shabbat.